Hi there, my name is Sergej Epp and I'm running security, IT, and threat research for Sysdig. And today I'm going to talk about the cyber verifiers law and how it can help you as a defender to win the ongoing race. Now, let me start with a simple question. Where are you today on your security automation loop? So whenever, for instance, a security vulnerability tool is finding a new vulnerability, who is making the decision if it should be patched or not? When your SOC is alerting on a novel attack, who is deciding if it's real or not? When your identity tool is finding a new or flagging a new access attempt, who is reviewing this? Is that the person or is that a mechanical verifier, a machine? Now, if you can answer this question within a couple of minutes, then perhaps this talk is not for you. If not, then stick with me for the next 20 minutes. I'm going to introduce you a new cybersecurity law, show you 5 playbooks you can implement right now based on this law, and show you as well 7 Oracle classes which can help making you automation cybersecurity even more possible. Now, let me start first of all with an example which pretty much shows how AI attacks are starting off today. 6 months ago in November, we've identified an attacker who used stolen credentials from an S3 bucket, which was public, in order to compromise this environment. And this entire attack just lasted for 8 minutes, from 0 to full admin. We've got all the data, and what we see is this attacker was not just fast, he was also pretty loud. First of all, he tried to create multiple Lambda functions and confessed automatically as well that he must be Serbian because all the different comments were in Serbian. After he achieved this, he tried to move lateral by assuming certain roles in this AWS environment. And if you can just ask your favorite AI to give you some example organizational roles in AWS, these are exactly the numbers you're going to get. So this is a clear indication that it was an AI being used here, which used the organizational ID from its training data, rather than trying to understand which organizational IDs to use in this compromised environment. And yes, they left even a smoking gun to help us understand which AI was used here. The role session name was called Claude Session. Next, they've tried to spin up some GPU clusters in order to mine cryptocurrency. They failed and tried then to open up a GitHub repository to get more information how to fix this. But it didn't work because this repository didn't exist. Most likely this was again something which the AI learned from its training data and which simply was not available in real world. Now, this type of attacks, which are lasting 8 minutes, is not an exception. It became the norm. A few weeks ago, I've launched a project called zerodayclock.com, which was signed meanwhile by many experts and security celebrities out there, including Bruce Schneier, Heather Atkins, Phil Vandenberg, Scott Everon, Jeff Moss. And they all signed this because the data on this project is very undeniable. And what it does is it shows you that in 2018, the time to exploitation from when a vulnerability is getting public and when a CV number is being assigned to the first real exploitation in the world, confirmed, for instance, by the US government, this time was more than 2 years. Now we're just speaking about hours. So the window of exploitation, it didn't really shrink, it just collapsed. And it's even worse because today, 2/3 of these vulnerabilities which are getting exploited in the wild are getting exploited before a CV number is being even assigned on the day when it's getting assigned. So if your security program was built to get a signal first and then patch, it clearly doesn't work anymore. But then I've heard a lot of feedback. Hey, 0 days are not important today for me because most of the attackers are anyway using still, leaked credentials or misconfigurations. And that's true because in the past that was the easiest way to hack an environment. But now it changed because literally, getting access to an environment is just a prompt way to ask you in the AI hacking tools to find a vulnerability in your environment. And we see this with our tiny threat research team at Sysdig day by day. We've published already multiple research papers where we see that the time between an advisory being published for an open source project to exploitation in real world, like our honeypots, our environment being propped for this vulnerability, this time is getting up to 4 hours. The recent attack was 4 hours. And just going back to the physics of cybersecurity, I don't believe that the maintainer of this project had even the time within this force to look at this specific advisory rather than to fix this and then to notify everybody. Now, this problem is not new. Every patch is an exploit blueprint. It's something we've heard already 2004 from Halvar Flake, who reconstructed patches and was able to build exploits. And the AI is now industrializing this and making us, showing us that pretty much all of the patches, all the advisories are becoming directly exploits out there. Now, the elephant in the room is obviously Mitos. Mitos was able to show tremendous success in finding zero-day vulnerabilities, just based on a recent exploitation paper, for instance, from OpenAI, Anthropic, DeepMind, we see it's definitely superior than many other models. But at the same time, we see that better scaffolding, like Microsoft is showing with their M-Dash, is still very important because they model superseded Claude Mitos on some of the benchmarks. And there are also some open source models like GLM 5.1, which are very close to Claude Mitos. So Mitos is really just a signal. The fact that offense is dominating in the AI age, this is a structural challenge. And we've heard this through pretty much all of the last weeks and months, and also in this conference, that this is a game changer for us. But now let me explain you why this is happening, and not just that this is happening. And the reason why it's happening is pretty simple. There's a pattern in AI. Every time you can measure a success of any domains in biology, mathematics, physics, you can get AI to become really good against this benchmark, against this measurement. Typically in 2-3 years, AI is getting better than any human out there. And this is what we've seen as well, for instance, with the Cyber Grand Challenge last year, where AI improved very, very good. And this is also something, we hear from a lot of researchers out there. For instance, Jason Wei from OpenAI published a blog suggesting that there's some sort of a verification law where he maps down every problem out there which AI could solve in 2 different domains. The one domain is how easy is it to verify or to measure the success of this problem. And then the other domain is how big is the solution room, the variation room for this specific problem. So 2 examples: Sudoku, huge solution room, a lot of variations, very easy to assess if Sudoku was solved correctly, right? That's a perfect use case for AI. The counter example to this is diet. We can choose just from a small variation of different things we can eat and drink, and then we'll see the results very often after a couple of weeks or months. So AI is not really good at that. And what I've tried to do is, last summer, I've applied this principle to cybersecurity, and I call it the cyber verifiers law. And what we see from this is all of the offensive domains are very easy to verify, like binary exploitation, network exploitation. If you pop a shell, if you run an exploit, if you test for cross-site scripting, all the signals are very deterministic. They're very binary. And this is where AI is typically getting as well this superpower advantage. The defense space is different, because looking at a binary, trying to understand if it's malicious or not, looking at your SIM, suspicious information every minute, right? It's very hard to say and to get this clear signal, is something bad happening there or not? 40, 50, 60%. We don't know. We have always to assess. And this is where, AI is also struggling. So over time, we've tried to build a lot of scaffolding, a lot of tricks to make this verification easy. For instance, in the malware space, by introducing sandboxes. And that's how we try to push a bit the verification below, but it's still very hard to verify it, even with these tools. Now, the cyber verifiers laws means in cybersecurity, the team with the cheapest verifiers is always going to win. And what's important to understand is, even with Mitos and Anthropic admitted, they have not trained the model specifically on cyber capabilities. And still, the model advanced so much more in the offensive side of things rather than defensive side of things. All right? Have you heard of any security vendor claiming now that they can solve all the cyber defense problems with Mitos? No, you haven't, because it's not the case. So the question is, if offense has the cheapest verifiers in the universe right now and getting this superpower, what does defense have? Here's the answer most people miss. Yes, the attackers have the objective verifiers, because the AI model can learn from all the different tactics, tools, procedures the attackers would run on the internet, on all the cyber ranges, the result from the cyber ranges, from all the pen test reports. And all this information is now in the weights of the model. It can very successfully measure and understand the process actually it has to run to achieve this objective. Now, what they don't have is, they don't have the environmental verifiers. This is where defense is succeeding, because only we as defenders know the naming conventions of our environment, the identity priors, the operational procedures, how we deploy certain workloads, how the time baseline looking like. The example I showed you before, where the attacker CI was trying to perform certain activities, like trying to call, for instance, a GitHub repository, or trying to move lateral to certain identities, was coming from the trained data. So the AI is having some sort of an accent, right, which it learned during the training, and which gives us as a defender an advantage, because the speed of AI trying to do this activity, it confesses, and it gives us opportunity to detect these bad AIs, or even strategically to have the gap between the offense and defense asymmetry even be widened much more. Now, my question to you is, what principle is AI changing in cybersecurity? And just looking back and also, hearing this from other speakers today, we see that all the same principles we had in cybersecurity, like security by design and default, assume bridge, list privilege, zero trust, order loop, they all still apply. The question is just, how can we keep up now with the speed of AI in order to keep the humans out of the loop? Because looking today at AI being used in offense, an attacker just gives the order to an AI, hey, go ahead and give me full admin and deploy the GPU clusters. And then the AI will come back once it's achieved it, because the errors it's making, the objectives it's achieving, this is very, very cheap for the AI to do. And the same trend we're seeing as well around engineering, because measuring the engineering success of the AI building out the code, deploying the code, is almost fully automated. Now in security, unfortunately, we don't have the situation. A lot of the decisions are still being reviewed and decided by humans. And now if we can keep the humans out of the loop, we'll be able to improve as well this cycle of AI. And this is what I call the AI ladder. So initially in the past, we had this, human-led loops where the humans were looking at the GUIs, trying to understand what's happening and taking the decision. Now you start to see more and more AI-assisted frameworks where humans are still in the loop, but then they're using AI to research such information, bring this in context before taking the decision to patch something or to remediate certain access right. And now what we need to do is we need to remove the humans completely out of the loop and force the humans to use AI so that they can improve the AI, measure, first of all, the quality of the steps AI is performing and give it feedback. And if you just look a bit at the evolution, we had this multiple levels on how we've tried to do it by having initially, code-based playbooks. Then we saw we had the first invention of no-code, low-code playbooks, and now we have the way just to have an objective-based playbooks. But still, a lot of this, AI SOC or AI source startups are failing out there. And the reasons why, it's because they don't have the right scaffolding, the right mechanical verifiers which are reliable and which can be used for the AI to perform this loop automatically. And this is what I'd like just to showcase based on a couple of examples. Let's start with vulnerability management. In vulnerability management, we have a capability which is looking at binaries or containers and understands the execution reachability of a malicious code, of vulnerable code. So based on our analysis, we see that 95% of different vulnerabilities are even not reachable in the code itself. So we can use reachability. We can use the network reachability to understand if this malicious code which is reachable is even reachable through the network. We can then have an AI pen testing agent now to go back and try to exploit that, to validate that the exploit is really working. We can then have automatically, if this is working, an AI agent to create rules specifically for the exploitation of that vulnerability, or go even further and then create a PR and fix and submit this automatically to the engineering queue. Now, having all this deterministic or most deterministic type of verifiers are going to give us a trustful and confident way to say, let's automate vulnerability management and get rid of 99% of the vulnerabilities out there. Not simply, putting them in a low priority, ignore them because they are not relevant. And this is the way how we can automate here the loop for vulnerabilities which are real, which are existing, and which can be exploited by AI going forward. And by the way, looking at zerodayclock.com, we see also that from all the vulnerabilities out there in the last 2 years, not even 1% of these vulnerabilities were exploited in the wild. So it's another indication that focus is highly important. The same we can do for patch management. Instead of now asking the humans to review the patches, we can just introduce a methodology to patch every day, to introduce a software to rebuild pretty much the software from the source every day. And this is a principle which was introduced by Phil Venables a while ago, and I love this principle because by having this foundation, it will help us now to introduce new packages, new code in a more reliable way, and then have, for instance, distress containers, site attestation being part of that, having canary metrics as well to understand which of these builds are failing, which are not failing, with the functionality to alter or back. A lot of organizations are doing this already, partially, and I think that's the way to go for patch management going forward for most of the organization, and really remove this manual review boards for patching. Same approach also for access and entitlement management. I don't know why we're still going out and then asking managers to review, access and permissions of the employees. If we can just look at the usage telemetry and see, hey, these employees haven't used these permissions for the last 90 days. Let's just revoke them automatically based on the reachability, blast radius, some other enrichment as well we can use, and remove this 97% of permissions which are never used anywhere. Now, security operation is a bigger topic because here we have tons of different aspects where we have very deterministic way, or at least reliable way, to find and stop attackers. Detections are called honey tokens, environment drifts. All of them can help to make the decision to auto-key or isolate an environment. Honey tokens is the best example for this. We've been speaking, about honey tokens for what, 2 decades already in cybersecurity, and it's such an easy one to say, I'm going now to deploy in every container a honey token. In case this honey token is accessed and used by somebody, I'm going to kill this container. In the same way, I can do this with, for instance, new executables or identities. It's even a native feature by Kubernetes to say, I understand if there's a drift in my executables moving to production, I'm going to kill now this process or the entire container to stop a specific attack and really eliminate this 99% of alerts, which we can anyway react on because we have just a few hours and perhaps in the future even minutes to react on this type of attacks. And now last but not least, risk management. We've been doing GRC and risk management always manually, trying to understand where's our biggest risk, what should we put focus on, which control replace, which control to introduce new. Now we have the advantage of having a continuous red teamer whom we can ask with the help of AI to go and validate a lot of these different perspectives, a lot of these different scenarios, and show what's real and what's not real. We can make risk management being measurable and remove all this manual work and just put focus on the right aspects of cybersecurity. Now, with this, I hope I was able to give you a couple of perspectives how we can, with the help of mechanical verifiers, put security into the loop in some of the aspects. And now putting them together, we have 7 classes of mechanical verifiers, which can help you think a bit more strategically about the way how automation can work going forward. The first one are canary verifiers, like all the honey tokens, everything where you can just get such a big win by a very small investment in your security program. Second, provenance and attestation proofs. Very, very important, especially if you have continuous pipelines where you're pushing code and we don't have time really to look manually at alerts. Replay harnesses when you're building detection rules, or invariance, policy as a code. Niels was talking about this yesterday. So that's a very, very powerful way. And with the help of AI, we can now go back and scale this up because we understand all the context of what's working, what's not working. And by the way, help as well increase this defend advantage of having a very unique environment based on this invariance. Sandboxing is something hopefully everybody has in the environment. Graphs, very, very important to scaffold as well and provide a clear attack path, but also defense path for the agent and the AI to reason in a more effective way. And then also last but not least, accent verifiers. We know the naming conventions, we know the identity conventions in our organization. Monitoring for drift can help you detect these attackers. Now, I started this presentation 20 minutes ago with a question, how you closing the security loop. And I hope now you understand why I've asked this question, what it means. In 2008, the mean time to exploitation was 2.5 years. Now it's just hours. So you cannot really regulate the clock. But what you can do is you can build verifiers and close the loop. And with this, pick a domain and make it happen. Thank you very much.